Hey everybody, I'm live. It's a pop call. It's an almost pop call. It was sort of scheduled for last night, but I was in my office late and it got too late to really do this. So I had to fly to Austin, Texas today to give a speech before some CEOs this evening for my book, The Memo, and speak here tomorrow. And I just thought it was a better venue and a better opportunity to really spend some time. Hello, Alan from Houston, Texas. I have a team on the ground, by the way, in Houston, helping with all the recovery from Hurricane Harvey. So if you need our help, reach out. So John Hope Bryant, hey Vincent, from Newburgh, New Jersey, New York, I mean. John Hope Bryant, CEO of Operation Hope, also CEO of Bryant Group Ventures and the Promise Homes Company, two of the largest entities in the country of its site. Hey Karen Allen. The nonprofit is the largest financial inclusion organization in the country, built from scratch, and Promise Homes Company, which I just launched in June, hey Ricky Bug, is the largest owner of single-family residential real estate by a minority-controlled institutional quality owner in the country. So I know how to build something from nothing, including a movement, and still talk to you straight and do it with integrity. Not perfect. Nobody's perfect. I screw up every day. But to come at you straight, then I'm going to suggest to you that there's a different way that we can think about, hey, Cape Town's in the house. Hey, David, just came from South Africa. There's another way that we can possibly deal with some of our problems from the way that it's just so obvious that we've been dealing with this for the last 50 to 100 years, which is just to scream, holler, and do what's really predictable without understanding the game that's underneath our frustration. So let me come at you straight with this. With regard to the whole thing about bending your knee and the football thing and the national, well, look, what anybody wants to do, as long as you're not hurting anybody else. Hey, Derek Miller from Atlanta. If that's how you want to express yourself, I'm 100% cool with that. 100. So this is not about whether you should bend your knee, shouldn't bend your knee, whether you should salute the flag. I salute the flag, whatever. But if you don't want to do it, I thank our military for their service. But if you don't want to do that and that's your way of protesting, look, they got people running around with Klan signs right now trying to recruit at high schools. I think that's much more important than whether somebody's bending a knee on a football field. But I do understand people who are passionate about the topic on both sides. I just think that we're arguing about the wrong thing and in the wrong ways. But that's not my business. The only issue I had with this whole bending the knee thing is the guy who started it didn't vote. That's my only problem with the whole thing. Is Ambassador Andrew Young, my mentor, Dr. King, gave their whole life, so we'd have the right to vote. And the brother who started this whole thing, right, chose consciously not to vote. So if you're trying to change some lives, you're trying to change our way of thinking, don't just give me symbolism, give me action. Write a check, vote, lean in, hire minority contractors, hire minority vendors, create jobs, change the narrative of our communities and how they operate. But if you're not going to vote in a democracy that relies on us to make sure that bums and idiots don't end up in high office, then you have very little things you can say to me with regard to what I should be doing, how I should be comporting my life, and some moral statement. And a lot of folks not voting has resulted in some very interesting things going on in Washington, D.C., and some very interesting people holding office. That's not what this video is about. I'm just saying my only issue, hey, Iowa, Shirley Brown signing in, my only issue with this whole situation about bending a knee, taking a knee or not, is the gentleman who started the whole thing didn't vote. Okay, now, so let's now go to this real, he did go in his pockets, Eldridge said. Yes, he started a nonprofit to help something in the community. I acknowledge that. The brother did do that. He didn't vote, okay? So if you don't vote, don't talk to me, all right? So if you want to rationalize it, you can do that. But we live in a democracy. You got to vote, period. Otherwise, people who do vote end up putting people in office who are creating a lot of damage, including what's going on in Washington right now. That's not what this video is about. This video is a real scandal behind the young lady JEMELE Hill, who was suspended, and us not understanding the game. Let me make something clear to you. They did not suspend her when she reached out regarding number 45, the president, the current president of the United States. When she reached out and said some things about him, which arguably on some level might be true, at least his actions are curious. When she said that, they pat her on the hand, tapped her, hey, don't do that again. They had a conversation with her. because what he's doing in Washington wasn't directly connected to ESPN's business model, right? And in fact, so a lot of people at ESPN might have actually unconsciously even been down with the whole situation of what she believed. They just wanted her to, do it in a slightly more diplomatic way, so they're not getting tweets from the White House. All right, but she survived that, right? And she had just let that go. She would still be on the air right now, right? So that was 2 weeks before the second thing clicked off. That wasn't the deal. When she tweeted that next time, and she said, if you really want to hurt these folks, some of these owners, protest or back away from their advertisers. Now she's at a whole different situation. Let me remind you what the head of the Black Muslim movement told Malcolm X when Malcolm X was going after I think it was the Jewish leaders. He said, Malcolm, can you please stop urinating in a well I'm desperately trying to get water out of? So at the same time that there was sort of this sort of word war, the head of the Black Muslim movement at that moment was trying to get funding from some Jewish leaders at the same time that Malcolm was jamming up Jewish leaders, and that's what the message was to Malcolm. Hey, chill, man, you're messing with the pocketbook. When Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Started talking about money, talking about redistribution of wealth, he didn't live for his first speech. They let him go through civil rights, let him go through with the March on Washington, they let him deal with, by the way, that was a march for jobs and freedom. I'm about to get to some stats about the NFL here in a minute just to break this down to you. But that march that Martin did was a march for jobs and freedom. We forget the jobs part and just want to talk about the freedom part. You cannot have democracy without talking about the economics. And he said we're here to cash a check, a bad check marked non-sufficient funds. I don't think he said you don't matter if you don't vote. I don't think he said you don't matter if you don't vote. Brandon said that. I didn't say you didn't matter if you didn't vote. I said if you didn't vote, I don't want to hear from you. That you can't tell me morally what to say if you did not vote in the United States of America. I mean, you don't count if you don't vote. If you're not a stakeholder and you don't vote, then whatever you're doing does not matter. It's just symbolism, and people are laughing at you, by the way. But let me stay focused on the topic here, so we get distracted. This is not about what we're against, folks. This is about what we're for, all right? So just focus. I'm not trying to create an argument. Just focus it out for a minute. I'm gonna hit you with something here in a second. So when Dr. King started talking about money, not the war effort, not politics, not racism, not all this stuff, they let him march. They let him talk about the war. Let him give speeches, right? They left him alone for 13 years. Listen to me now. 13 years they left Dr. King alone. Threatened him, yes. Irritated him, yes. But they let him alone. The minute Dr. King started talking about a redistribution of wealth of the top 3%, you have a Nobel Peace Prize winner now trying to mobilize all black people in America, all Latinos, Asians, white people. He said this, Dr. King said this, you cannot legislate goodness and cannot pass a law to force someone to respect you. The only way to social justice in a capitalist country is economics and ownership. When he started talking about money and talking about the redistribution of wealth of the top 3%, they killed him. He didn't even give his first speech. Never made it out of Memphis. All right? Now let's pivot to this situation with Miss Hill. When she started talking about advertisers and these teams, she didn't realize the tripwire she stepped on. Here's the deal. By the way, they got Al Capone not for murder and mayhem. They got Al Capone for tax evasion. Do you hear me? They got Al Capone not for murder and mayhem, all of which he was guilty of. They got Al Capone for tax evasion. The government said you can be a criminal, and we may not be able to convict you for that, but you're going to pay your fair share of taxes, even on your ill-gotten gains. So here's the deal. All 32 NFL teams, listen to me now, share this broadly. All 32 NFL teams are worth as much as every Major League Baseball and NBA team combined. I'm going to repeat that. Thank you, Juan, for donating to Operation Hope. I see that. Hey, Michael Felder says it's about the money. Exactly. You want, hey, Yolanda, you want to understand something? Follow the money. Follow the money. I'm going to repeat this. You got to understand this statistic. Brandon says, preach. All 32 NFL teams, listen to me now, are worth more, the 32 NFL teams are worth more than every Major League Baseball team and every National Basketball League, NBA team combined. You combine all NBA teams and all National Basketball League together, and the NFL sweeps them. Now, I'm about to go deeper. The average NFL franchise is valued at $2.3 billion. That's up 22% from last year. And it's up 64% from 2014. I'm looking at my notes just to make sure I get these stats exactly right. I want you to understand this. The NFL has doubled in value, more than doubled in value since 2014, and has increased by 25% in value since last year. You hear me? Okay, I'm going deeper. The ESPN, where she works, has a $15.2 billion television rights deal to broadcast NFL games. Now, I want you to stop and think about that. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. The average team is worth $2.3 billion. That's with a B. The teams distribute $8 billion. $8 billion amongst them every year. The TV rights alone for ESPN that ESPN paid for is a $15 billion deal. And you've got one of your commenters on the air who is cashing a check, not writing them, who is telling the public to back away from advertisers. Come on now, you listening now? To back away from advertisers of the NFL teams that are backing and paying for the broadcast that she's making. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying, as Chris Rock would say, I understand. I'm not telling you not to do something. I'm saying we've got to stop being emotional. We've got to start having a response and not a reaction. You hear me? We got to start having a response, Darlene says, I get it, and not a reaction. We got to stop being emotional and start being intelligent. We got to operate from the neck up, not the shoulders down, right? We've got to, Sergio keeps saying John Bryant for 2020. I'm not running for president, Sergio, but thank you very much. I think we got much more important work that's right here. So I'm gonna give you these numbers again, because this is, and by the way, for much of this century, now here's a real drop the mic here. For much of this century, ESPN, the television sports network, has been Disney's cash machine, their cash cow, collecting billions more dollars from American subscribers each year than the company gets from its blockbusters Star Wars, Marvel, and Pixar films combined. Now listen now. Yeah, that's right. Numbers don't count. Who just said that? Listen now. But for the past 6 years, fewer and fewer people have been paying for ESPN. The network subscribers base has declined from a peak of 100 million households in 2011 to less than 88 million households today. They're going in the wrong direction. Now, let me make sure I understand this properly. ESPN has paid $15 billion for rights to the NFL. The industry distributes almost $10 billion amongst its teams. The teams are worth more than the NBA and the National Basketball, the Baseball League and NBA combined, all teams. It's a cash cow and is dependent upon television rights, not you even going into the stands. The subscriber base, because people are bored or disinterested or whatever, and this is entertainment, by the way, sports is entertainment, has gone down from 100 million Americans to 88 million Americans, and the number's going south. And now you're the head of the network, and you've got some drama from the White House, yeah, whatever, okay, we can get over that. But now you got one of your broadcasters telling people, I'm not saying it's for or against, by the way, I'm just helping you understand what's going on here. Don't get mad about the wrong thing. Don't get mad, get even. And you got a broadcaster on your network telling people not to support the subscribers that are paying for the network, paying for the contract that's, hold on now, paying her salary. Shan says start your own league. You can do that, absolutely. But if you want to understand this league, you better understand the business model. So that's why she got suspended. Plain and simple. You don't mess with that business model unless you know what you're doing. That's a tripwire. So what we should have done, Darlene's just shaking my head, we have got to be more intelligent and more thoughtful. Not everything is a fight on the front line. Not every fight is in public. Do you know that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would tell Ambassador Andrew Young, I don't want you arrested, Andy. I want you to go meet with these business leaders behind closed door. I'm going to shut down the economy in this little town, but I'm not trying to hurt them, right? I'm not trying to devastate their business. I'm trying to get their attention. Once I get their attention, Andy, he'd say, I want you to go behind, Scotty says, say it, go behind closed doors and meet with 100 of these business leaders in town and cut a deal. See now, cut a deal to get the whites only sign down. You see, there was a goal to all this. Cut a deal, Andy. Get them to take the whites only signs down to their businesses. Cut a deal and take those little stupid signs over the water fountain down so we can, because water ain't black and white water, it's just water, right? And get black folks working and get these jobs inside these soda shops and all this kind of stuff. Andy, I want you to cut a deal, and as soon as you cut the deal, we'll stop them marching and let them get their commerce back. Because 80% of the customers in these small towns were black customers. Don't you know that Dr. King shut down the bus company? I forget which town it was. I think it was Montgomery, Alabama. He shut down the bus company for 9 months, and the bus company went bankrupt because most of those customers were black customers. So while you have a white person with $1 going in the front door, you had a black person with $1 going into the back door. You hearing me? You understanding me? It was the same green dollar. So Dr. King knew that if he shut down the economy and created their own taxi service, and so somebody said start your own network, okay, Dr. King started his own transportation line, but he wasn't trying, thank you, Joshua, I think you said it's Montgomery. Nathaniel, yes, Montgomery. Dr. King wasn't trying to hurt them, wasn't calling them names, wasn't symbolism for symbolism's sake. He said, I want everybody to vote. I want everybody to obey laws, even though these are unjust laws. We're going to quietly protest them, and we're not going to cooperate. We're not going to finance our own oppression. So we're not going to just get on these buses and we're going to be treated like crap. Well, that put so much pressure on the private bus company that the bus company was driven to its knees and had to file bankruptcy. And then Dr. King sent Ambassador Andrew Young, who he never wanted arrested because that's a negotiator, go put in a business suit, quietly go behind closed doors, cut a deal to get the whites only signs down. It was the business leaders in the South that integrated the South. It wasn't the government. It wasn't the president of the United States. It wasn't the governor. In fact, those folks were actually standing in the doorway, not letting a black person come through a doorway. It wasn't the mayor. It was business leaders who had economic pressure and a moral conscience, I guess, who told the political leaders, stop this madness. We're taking down our signs. By the way, think about what got integrated in the South first. Was it the public buildings? No. Was it the public universities? No. Talk to me now. Let me know you hear what I'm saying. It was Woolworths. It was J.C. Penney. It was a soda shop. It was private businesses now that took those whites only signs down first, hired black folks, and then the government came along for the ride. What broke the back of apartheid? Was it government becoming enlightened? No. It was Coca-Cola and other companies saying, no more. We're not participating in this system until you change your moral ways. We're not going to give you any economic prosperity. But it was a positive movement, not a negative one. And listen to me now, it had to have a purpose to it. Every problem has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Every problem has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And listen, you've got to leave your adversary with their dignity. This is something else we get wrong. Talk without being offensive. Yes, Dr. King was a genius, exactly. And he wouldn't march after 3 o'clock because he needed the media to get the film. Back then it was film on a canister on a plane to New York City and processed in time for the 11 o'clock news because it wasn't digital back then. It was, analog, not digital. So here's what I tell people. Talk without being offensive. Listen without being defensive. And always leave even your adversary with their dignity. Because if you don't, they'll spend the rest of their life trying to make you miserable. You got to understand the game. You got to get the memo. You got to fight in a way that's not fighting. You got to step over mess and not in it. You got to understand where your power and where it comes from. You got to not step on a tripwire, because if you're one who's cashing checks from someone who's writing checks, and then you are damning the person who's writing you your check, that's not so smart, and it's not sustainable, and you're expendable. They will get rid of you and get somebody else. All these players who are taking a knee, they all get a paycheck. From who? The owners. The owner, and by the way, if the owners find that the public keeps not watching ESPN, the economic model for this whole thing changes. All of a sudden, people feeling, I can't even go to a football game without getting politically jammed up. By the way, somebody's going to say the sports has always had politics in it. You're right. All right, you're right. But if you don't keep the first thing up front most of the time, which is that people need a break from their stress of their life. They're trying to go to a ball game, a football game. They're trying to find something where everything's not racial and everything's not political. They're trying to get a break somewhere. And if they don't feel they're going to get that from the NFL, they're going to stop subscribing. They're going to stop going. The economic model will change. And all these salaries to all of these black players and minority players will stop. The only reason these minority players, make sure you're listening to me now and you're paying attention. I think you are. The only reason these minority players are getting multi-million dollar deals is because the owners are making billions of dollars. You see, they're cashing checks, the players, the owners, and in all due respect to Miss Hill, she's cashing a check. The players are employees. Miss Hill's employed. The owners are writing checks. And back in the day of Hank Aaron, he didn't make more than $200,000 the best year he ever made. By the way, he's made his money in business after playing. Hank Aaron, who I know, honored to know him, never made more than $200,000 a year. He's financially independent. And he's a philanthropist, by the way. These guys are making millions and millions of dollars because the owners and the networks are making billions and billions and tens of billions of dollars. And when that gravy train stops, we may end up winning the battle here, which is some symbolism, and losing the war. Meaning that the guy who started this whole thing may not get signed, which means he can't do much good in the world because the broke person can't help anybody. And he won't have a voice anymore. He'll have to start giving motivational speeches at churches and whatever, because that's about all that he'll be able to get employed for. And most football players have a 3.5-year run. You have 3.5 years that you can work before you're off. And by the way, after 3.5 years, most of these guys are injured. And 70% of all NFL players file bankruptcy 5 years after retirement. And 84% of all NBA players file for bankruptcy 5 years after retirement. And 80% of all the marriages of these professional athletes are over 5 years after retirement because the money is gone. I know what I'm talking about, people. And so if you're spending your prime years where you're trying to gain as much money as you can as a player to create a nest egg so you can live for the rest of your life, and then you're cutting off your economic interests because you're making some symbolic statement that may or may not amount to anything, you better know what you're doing. So I think that a much smarter route would be for all these players to create a coalition and go and sit down with these business leaders who own these teams, who own the network, and say, take a page out of Dr. King's book, talk without being offensive, listen without being defensive, and always leave even your adversary with their dignity. If you don't, they'll spend the rest of their life trying to make you miserable. It becomes personal. All these players versus trying to embarrass people, call people names, call people the devil, that's right, the Cy Smith, the 30 for 30 broke series. Everybody needs to watch that show series. All these guys going broke, right? So get 20, 30, 100 of these players together. Make sure you get some white players too. Cannot be just a black thing. Get the Hispanic players. Get all these people together and go sit down with the leadership. I'll help you. Sit down with the leadership. Najee Ali says teach. Thank you, Najee, man. It's really important to me you get my message because I know that you're like, hey, these guys have a right to have a voice. So I know it was very important that you got that I'm not denying somebody their right to vote. I'm saying is how we do it, not what we're doing. So thank you, Najee, for that. I love you and had a good time with Reverend Al Sharpton on his show last week. Okay, so I gotta go give this speech. I'm not sure what they want. So watch this. Okay. I just hung that up, okay, because you guys are so more important. So if you get 30, 40 of these players, 50 of these players of all races, right, and go meet with the power structure and say, let's cut a deal. Let's do a public service campaign. Let's do a charitable outreach. Let's try to reform police brutality. Whatever the issue is, let's use our power for good. And let's create a problem that has a solution that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The problem has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a solution. Currently, there's no solution to this. Like, you want to take a knee because you're afraid of, because you're pissed off about police brutality. Well, how in the hell is the NFL and everybody taking a knee going to resolve the fact that some police officer making $30,000 a year in some little hick town is kicking some black person's ass because he's depressed, has a high school education, his wife is not giving him any attention, and he grew up backwards somewhere with no exposure? How in the hell is taking a knee on the football field going to affect that guy? I can't get in his heart. I can't get in his mind. There's no strategy here. We need to have a strategy. We need to have a plan. We cannot be black for a living anymore. Nobody cares. With 35 million black people, there's now 40 million Latinos, so now we're not even the biggest minority group anymore. You have the majority of white folks still in this country who have a credit score of 700 and all the wealth, and 44% of all black folks' credit score is 620 or lower, which means we can't even access the capital markets. So we need to be working on getting our credit score up, getting our intelligence up, starting businesses, creating our own wealth, creating our own sophisticated approach to changing our lives, because what we've been doing for the last 50 or 60 years of marching only, protesting only, there's a reason to protest, yes, but doing that only, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome is the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome is the definition of insanity. So yes, there's a reason to protest. There's a reason to lift your hand and say that I'm against this. But if that's all you're doing, then people write you off as a fool. They write you off as a simpleton. They say you have no sophistication, no strategy, no approach. You don't understand the game. The game is what I told you. I'm going to end where I started. Listen now, I'm going to say these numbers again. All 32 NFL teams are worth more than all NBA teams and baseball teams combined. Hear that. The average team is worth $2.3 billion. That's up 22% from last year and 64% from 2014. Doubling in value in, my math is right, 3 years, and you don't think they're concerned about their money? And then ESPN, where this young lady works, has a $15 billion contract with the league to broadcast through 2021, and you think they're going to keep her on and let her run her mouth like that when she's telling advertisers to step away from the very thing that's paying her salary? So you're on the Titanic, and you are literally on the top of the Titanic. You're celebrating. You got your top hat on. You got your whole thing on, but you have a huge a ball and chain that's a ton, and you're pounding that ball and chain on the side of the Titanic, trying to knock a hole in it so that water will go in the bottom and capsize the Titanic. You're literally rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic. You are shooting yourself in the foot. We need to recognize there's some folks who are writing checks and some folks who are cashing checks. And the people who write checks need to be very thoughtful about what they say and how they say it, because it might affect those who are writing those checks, and you may not get a check anymore. And then once you get in that situation, you can't help anybody, because a broke person can't help anybody. They can't even help themselves. All right. We need to be thoughtful. We need to be intelligent. We need to not step on tripwires and step on dynamite all the time. We can stop daring people to fight us, right? Understand, this is the game has changed, people. This is not about love or hate anymore. In Dr. King's day, I'm almost done. In Dr. King's day, people said, I love you, hey, Zena Knox, amen, or I hate you, all right? They let you know exactly what they stated. But you black folks, you're 35 million people in a country of 350 million plus people. Latinos got more numbers than you, all right? And we don't own enough, we don't pay enough taxes, we don't vote enough, we're not relevant enough, we're more of a liability increasingly on the statistics than we are an asset. So in that environment, ladies and gentlemen, it's not about love or hate. Listen to me now, it's about radical indifference. Nobody cares enough about you to hate you. Nobody cares about your drama. Nobody really cares that you complain. That's why we spend all of our time on the reactive side of life versus the proactive side of life, versus building wealth. We're